I am here mainly because I am jealous, envious, bitter, because you get to be the generation that get to be on campus at the beginning of a great social movement. There is a great social movement that's being born in your midst, in the country, and you are on the campuses at a time where you can actually play a leading role in shaping that out. What I'm talking about is this incredible upsurge. It's a little bit too loud, huh? Can you cut it down just a little bit? This incredible upsurge in environmental activism, environmental awareness. It's my view that the movement that you guys are building now and are part of, some of you aren't even clear about how big it is and the impact it's having on the country off the campuses, is the key missing element to fixing a number of problems in society. And what I want to share with you from off of a campus perspective, somebody who works in an urban community, our view of what's going on and what's possible. The most important thing I can say to you is simply this. Many of you in this room have committed yourselves to an understanding that says, we don't have any throwaway resources. We don't have any throwaway species. We don't have any throwaway energy sources. What I want to say is that that's right, and we also don't have any throwaway neighborhoods. We don't have any throwaway children. It's all precious. And the movement that you're building will hit its true power and will hit its true maturity when it in fact embraces both principles at the same time. So what I want to do is take you through a short history of the environmental movement up to this point, but I want to tell it in a different way than it's usually told, because I want to include people of color, I want to include poor people, I want to include the people who usually are left out of the discussion. I want to put those folks back in the discussion to give you an opportunity to see what your chance is now going forward to this new, what we call the third wave of environmentalism. It's on a diet.
It was working earlier.
Right. I'll let my friend work on. My esteemed colleague work on. Oh, see? So my presentation goes like this. We're going to talk about what I call the green wave. Then we're going to talk about green collar jobs, and then we're going to talk about opportunities for Oakland. But you could say any urban community, and you'll get a sense about how this all ties in together. When we talk about the green wave, what we mean is something we call the third wave of environmentalism. Now, that is a pedagogical trick, okay? The reason that I call it the third wave of environmentalism is to provoke you to think to yourself, well, what was the first wave? Right? I'm just revealing the methodology here because I'm trying to trick you into paying attention as we go forward. Professors do this all the time. I'm just revealing that this is, in fact, just a stunt to keep your attention. So, stay with me. The first wave of environmentalism you were asking about moments ago, conservation wave. Now, most of the time you talk about conservation, the first people you think about, Teddy Roosevelt, John Muir. I want to make the argument, though, that there were conservationists before those folks. They were the Native Americans. The Native Americans were the first and best conservationists. How can I make that claim? I can make that claim in the following way. Before the Europeans arrived, a squirrel could climb a tree at the Atlantic Ocean and go branch to branch to branch to branch to the Mississippi River. Okay. That's conservation. Fully populated continent. Branch to branch to the Mississippi River. What do birds do in the wintertime? What do birds do? They fly south for the winter. You see any birds flying south this winter? It used to sound like thunder. It used to blot out the sun. Okay? That's conservation. All right? So then, after about 10,000 years of that kind of conservation, a genius level of conservation, the continent got put under new management. And you suddenly needed an environmental movement. You didn't need it for 10,000 years. Suddenly you need one. And that's when you get Teddy Roosevelt, all those guys all the way through David Brower. What do they say? They're saying, don't pave the whole country, okay? Don't cut down every tree. Okay, leave a blade of grass. Let's conserve what's left, what we've got. And that was the beautiful part of the environmental movement. And a lot of people, when they think about the environmental movement, that's what they think about. But there was a second wave. 1963, the regulation wave starts. What's that? A woman named Rachel Carson writes a book called what? Silent Spring. You guys know your stuff. And she says, she makes a brilliant point, that environmentalism is not just about creeks and critters, okay? It's also about people. It's about human beings, about human health effects. It's about the toxic chemicals that are building up in our own blood. And as a result of that, an entire wave of regulation starts. The Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, et cetera. And that regulatory wave, 1970, you have Earth Day, et cetera. People look at that as the environmental movement, the modern environmental movement. But there was a problem with that wave. And the problem was there was not enough thought and care and concern and consideration for poor people, for people of color. It was a very elite movement, a very affluent movement, a mostly white movement. That's not bad in and of itself, but something began to happen where, because those people were not at the table, because those voices were not considered, white polluters and white environmentalists began to almost accidentally conspire to put all the poison and all the toxics and all the pollution in black, brown, and poor communities. Nobody said, oh, let's do that. But that began to become the outcome. So in the 1980s, African Americans, Latinos started saying, wait, hold on a second. Right? We want regulation, but we want regulation with equity. And what you saw was this movement called the environmental justice movement. Separate from the environmental movement, environmental justice, where people were saying, our children should not bear the unequal burden of asthma, of cancer, of poisons, just because we have an industrial society. Regulate, yes, but don't regulate it all on us. Regulate with equity. It's very, very important, and that movement continues today. It's very, very important that we understand that history, because now we are entering into a third wave of environmental activism. And what you begin to see about this wave, it is a very different wave than the first two. The first one says, conserve what we've got. The second one says, regulate the problem. Regulate the bad stuff. Don't make the bad stuff worse. Try to keep the bad stuff from killing us. The second wave says, hey, the third wave says, conserve, sure. Regulate, sure, with equity. But invest in the solutions. Don't just regulate the problem. Invest in the solution. Invest in new clean and green technologies. Invest in hybrid cars. Invest in solar energy. Invest in the technologies of the future. And that is a very exciting development, because anytime you talk about a politics of investment, you're talking about a politics of opportunity, of hope, of optimism. But this is what I want to talk to you guys about. You're going to win. I can tell you right now, you're going to absolutely win on this stuff. But let me point something out to you. You can see how the white affluent movement is kind of lined up. But what about people of color, poor people? This is the key question that is not being asked yet. For poor people, for people of color, what is the meaning of this new green economy? Is it a green economy that will include us? Will it leave us out? Who cares? What difference will it make? I want to argue that the central moral challenge for your generation, the central political challenge, the central economic challenge is simply this. Can you lead this country to build a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty? Can you build a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. They can create green pathways to employment, to health, to wealth for people who would ordinarily be left out. This is your question. Can you ensure that this new green wave that's coming can lift all boats? Now, I put this to you because many people, when they think about the green economy, they still think about it as a fringe thing. You know, oh, well, you know, that's just the hippies or the whatever. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, many of you who may even be marginal on your campus, when you go home, right, your parents who had hoped that maybe you would get a good job out of school, and you come home and it's Thanksgiving and you don't want to eat the turkey because it's cruel to your brother's species or whatever. And your family members kind of look at each other. You know what they're thinking? They're thinking, I hope this passes, you see. This is a stage, I hope. This is a phase, I hope. Please, your clothes are strange looking. That's what they say. Not necessarily to you. Often to you, always about you, because they're worried. And they're worried because they have a view in their mind that you go to college and you get a job and you make back the money they spent on you, and they're afraid that you're going to wind up as homeless. Now, I can call them for you for a fee and give them this presentation. Because what you're going to see is that as oppositional as you think you are and as countercultural as you think you are, your values are already winning. The green wave is not a marginal fringe countercultural thing anymore. It is a huge, massive intervention in the U.S. economy, growing on a vertical. Now I want to show it to you, because then you'll understand why it's so important that you start thinking right now about who is going to get left out. Because you're going to win. You are going to march over the next few years from the margin of this society to the absolute dead center. You're going to see presidential candidates mouthing your slogans. You're going to see corporations mouthing your slogans. You're going to see the biggest, most powerful forces in this country and in the world marching, running, trying to keep up with you. And the only question that you have as you make this transition from the fringe to the center is, who are you going to take with you and who are you going to leave behind? This is a big, big development, the biggest development in the U.S. economy. Green has gone mainstream. Here's a little sort of hint about it. This is Cameron Diaz getting into a Prius. This is George Clooney getting into an electric car. This is Laurie David, whose husband wrote Seinfeld. And these are other famous people whom I don't know. And she's just really attractive, and I want her to think. But here's the deal. Big, big people are jumping on your bandwagon. This time last year, what'd you get? You had Vanity Fair. They put out a big green issue. That's Julia Roberts and Al Gore. You had Elle magazine. They say, green is the new black. I don't know what that means. I take it as a compliment. Anyway, Wired magazine comes out with Al Gore, the climate crisis. Popular Mechanics came out with a magazine. Oh, the green thing. And then, you know, Katrina had happened. Al Gore comes out with the movie. Now, if you had told anybody 2 years ago that the history of Earth would change based on Al Gore and a PowerPoint presentation, but here we are. So this, you say to yourself, now, is it really this big? It is this big. The polluters, the despoilers, the defilers of the planet are now advertising about how green they are. This is General Motors talking about its flex fuel and hybrid fuel cell stuff, despite the fact that they're polluting more now than they ever have. This is, I don't know, this is some other GM. Check this out. Honda's got their environmentology campaign. You see? Honda, also talking about their fuel cell cars. They only built one of them. Nobody can buy one. You've got computer companies talking about the whole deal. Eco-Imagination, I guess that's General Electric. And this is my favorite one. Lexus. Corners and trees both deserve to be hugged. I don't make this stuff up. Now, the corporate America is saying, see, I guess it is easy to be green. Why would they be spending their money this way, right? This is transparently farcical, right? It's because of you. It's because there are people like you who actually believe in something. You are making a huge difference in the country, and you don't even know it. Just to give you a sense, there's this category in the U.S. economy called LOHAS. It's called Lifestyles of Health and Sustainability. You know what it is? It's all the stuff you buy. Right? Is this a big part of the U.S. economy? Well, let's do the math. Sustainable economy, that part of it, that's all the hybrid cars and the fuel cells and solar, 70 billion with a B. Alternative health care, you think you're doing something cool with the echinacea? Guess what? 30 billion with a B. Ecological lifestyles, 80 billion. Personal development, all your yoga, right? Your self-help tapes, 10 billion. Healthy lifestyles, all that kind of food you eat that gives me gas, 30. But I'm trying to keep up. 30 billion with a B. You add all that together, $230 billion green economy right now, standing flat-footed, growing on a vertical, $230 billion. And it's the most racially segregated part of the U.S. economy. It's the most racially segregated part of the U.S. economy in terms of who's owning, who's buying, who's getting the opportunity, who's investing. How is this possible? That the most hopeful, dynamic, exciting thing happening has this huge split in it. I'm going to talk about it in a second. Give you another window into it. Venture capital. Who knows what venture capital even is? A lot of you, some of you? I figure, well, it's when rich people make big bets on new stuff, right? Is that basically it? Right. So I'm rich. Okay, I'm not. If I were rich, I have to make a choice. Do I want to sit on my money? Do I want to invest it safely? Or do I want to make venture bets? I want to bet on the next big thing. Well, people who bet on the next big thing are called venture capitalists. Everybody was shocked, stunned, and floored in 2005. Why? Clean tech, green tech, was number 6. Number 6. Right behind telecommunications, right behind healthcare, in the big money bets. What's going to happen next? Fuel cells, solar power, hybrid technology. Number 6. People were stunned. They were stunned until last year when clean tech beat IT as the investment category. I don't have to tell you, every single economist is predicting that the number one venture capital category next year is going to be clean tech, if it's not already. Let me break those numbers down for you. These numbers I just showed you, just to back it up for just 1 second to show you. I'm only now drilling into this one. Drilling into that one up top. A piece of it is this. I'm going to drill down to a little bit more. Just a piece of what we're talking about. If you look at biofuels, right now we're at 15 billion. In 10 years we'll be at 52 billion. Wind, 11 to 50. Solar, 11 to 50. Fuel cells from 1 to 15. You add that together, just in clean energy alone, we're going to go from 40 billion to about 170 billion in 10 years. $170 billion. Now, you're talking about more than $100 billion of economic growth just in the clean energy sector alone. Who is going to get that money? Who is going to get that money? Who's going to have a chance to participate? This is going to be a key question for you guys to answer as you move forward. We see 3 possible futures and not 2. 3 and not 2. The first possible future is this one. That would be the bad one. Eco-apocalypse. We just blow it. We just blow it, okay? Right now, we're doing what you could call suicide economics on a planetary scale. What's suicide economics? Take a bunch of beautiful living things, destroy it, turn it into products, shrink wrap them, and throw them in the garbage can. And then call that economic growth. And do it as fast as you can, over and over. That's what your economy is right now. And if you keep that up with 7 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion people on the planet, you get a dead planet. And that's what we're doing right now. Now, a lot of people have already given up and believe that's where we're headed. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't believe that at all. I think that we're smart enough and we've got enough going for us, we can avoid that. But we may hit this. Eco-apartheid. You can't see what that is. That's a nice person doing yoga in a very clean environment, and that's a little kid with asthma, got an inhaler on her face, sitting on her sister's lap. You could wind up, if you aren't careful, just like the second wave. Just like the second wave. Where you mean to do well, you mean to do good, but you wind up creating a society of ecological haves and ecological have-nots. You say, that's not going to happen. That's not possible. That would be, how could that possibly be? Come to the Bay Area. Come to the Bay Area right now. You can go to Marin County, where they have, anybody been to Marin County? All right. Bio this, organic that, solar the other, hybrids everywhere, lots of tofu. You get in the car, 20 minutes later, you're in Oakland. Asthma epidemic, cancer clusters, people struggling to get jobs in the last century's pollution-based economy. Eco-apartheid. An apartheid society is a society divided by race, divided by class. Eco-apartheid. What we're fighting for is a different future than that. Why? First of all, goes without saying, eco-apartheid is immoral, it's unjust, it's awful. But worse than that, eco-apartheid is just a speed bump on the way to eco-apocalypse. Eco-apartheid is just a speed bump on the way to eco-apocalypse. You can't make the green economy work if you don't have the majority of people participating. If it's just the eco-elite, it will fail. In California, 55% of the people in California are people of color, according to the government. So that's probably like 65%. Well, the green economy can only succeed in California if the majority of people participate. And right now, that is going to be your generation's challenge, to figure out how to make this thing inclusive, expand it, and involve more people so we can have what we call eco-equity. I'm going to show you a grid which I thunk up, which I think is genius. I think it's brilliant. I'm hoping that somebody will give me a prize for this. So hold on. I'm going to show you this grid. The point of this grid, I got to brag on this grid. This grid, the point of this amazing grid I thunk up is to try to capture the entire environmental movement and all of its aspects on one piece of paper. Hard to do, but I did it. And then I want to talk to you about green-collar jobs in Oakland, and then I want to get your questions. Because really, what I want to do is get you guys going back and forth about what you can do in light of this vision. But here's where we are. I call my grid the fourth quadrant. Why? It's a pedagogical trick. Come on. I told you the first time I'm trying to trick you. Okay. To make you ask, what are the other three quadrants? So to build the grid, this is what we do. We start off, we say, look, most of the environmental conversation up until very recently has been about environmental problems. Woe is us, doom and gloom, poison, pollution, dying species, oh my God. Maybe you've heard this before. Where we're going, though, is toward a green conversation about solutions. What can we do? This particular dynamic describes the enthusiasm in the society right now, post-Katrina, post-Al Gore's film, searching for real solutions. But what's missing along this dynamic is what we call the rich to poor axis. This is the axis of wealth, of power, of gender, of race, of class, of money. We just call it rich to poor, but it's the axis of a lot more than just that. You put those two things together, you get this grid. Now, what's interesting about it is, to start over here on the problem side, up here in this first quadrant. If you talk to your typical wealthy person or affluent person, somebody who's got a lot of material goods, and you ask them, what are you concerned about? When you think about the environment, what comes to mind? What do affluent people tend to talk about when they think about environmental problems? What issues or topics? Endangered species. What else? Cape Wind, sure. You tend to see people focusing on rainforest, right? Melting ice caps, right? Big, charismatic megafauna, right? And their peril, right? Polar bears drowning because of global warming. Now, this is a critical thing to be focused on. Some people will poo-poo it out of ignorance. But in fact, if the rainforests go and the polar bears go, we go. So this is a very important section for people to be focused on, trying to preserve and protect and defend those species that can't preserve and protect and defend themselves. So it's critical. And yet, if I go into West Oakland and I show up at somebody's house and I'm like, hello, I'm here to talk to you about the polar bears. I don't get a good reception. I don't get a good reception. I'm not lying. When I go to West Oakland, I try and talk about polar bears and rainforests. People say, I got my own problems. I don't have time to hear about this stuff. So when you think about environmental issues, what are people who are closer down here, who have less money, less income, people who are poor? When they think about environmental problems, what do they think about? Think about trash, waste, clean water, bad air, asthma. Somebody said asthma, cancer, right? If anything, they think about people drowning because of global warming. That's from Katrina, right? There's a different entry point into the conversation around health, around my kid who's got asthma. That becomes the entry point. And this has been the distinction between mainstream environmentalism and environmental justice. Just this different point of emphasis. Both are important. And if anybody poo-poos the other, they're wrong. They're both important, but there is a difference. And now as we're moving into the green economy, you're seeing a similar dynamic. When people who are in that top part think about the green economy, what do they think about? Hybrid cars, Whole Foods, fuel cells, solar panels, all that stuff, right? I'll tell you one way to think about it. One way to think about it is they think about business opportunities for rich people, consumer choices for affluent people, right? Business opportunities for rich people, consumer choices for affluent people. Is that good or bad? That's wonderful. We want rich people to invest in technologies and businesses that help the planet and don't hurt the planet. We want that, and we want consumers to be able to choose products and services that help the planet, don't hurt the planet. So this is actually very good. But what about poor people who aren't going to buy a hybrid? What is the meaning of the green economy for them? That's what we talk about the fourth quadrant. All of them are important, but we think the next piece, the missing piece of the puzzle is what we call the fourth quadrant. When you focus on the fourth quadrant, that's when you begin to talk about green-collar jobs and other solutions that are particular to urban America. This is a picture of what's called People's Grocery in West Oakland. People's Grocery is a mobile market. In fact, it's a biodiesel van that takes organic agriculture that's grown near Oakland in the Bay Area and brings it into West Oakland, an urban neighborhood. Why do they do that? Because in a neighborhood with 30,000 people in it, there are no grocery stores and something like 50 liquor stores. If you want to feed your kid, you either got to take 15 buses or you got to go down to the liquor store and get the chicken that's been under the heat lamp for 2 days, and that's dinner. Okay? That's West Oakland. And so these very young people said, that's unacceptable. We're going to go to the farmers markets. We're going to go to the local folks. We're going to get a biodiesel bus, and we're going to drive into the community. And we're going to not only give food at a good cost to people, we're also going to train people or teach people how to cook better, et cetera, et cetera. This is how the green economy can begin to create health and wealth opportunities in the urban environment. Also, an example of, just really quickly. That's just an example of a community project, a student and youth-led project that's making a big difference. But there's also jobs to be had for people. When you think about the transition that you want to make, somebody's got to put up those solar panels. That's work. When somebody puts up a solar panel, you know what they are? They're on their way to being an electrical engineer. That's a green pathway out of poverty. Okay. When you say, we got to retrofit buildings so they don't leak so much energy. When somebody starts to double pane that glass so it doesn't leak, you know what they are? They're on their way to being a glazer. It's a green pathway out of poverty. They're on their way to being in a union, which is the number one way people get out of poverty when they get out of poverty. Okay? The work of making the economy green is work that can lift people out of poverty. It's literally the same thing. The question is, what do you do? How do you act to make sure that the jobs that the green economy creates goes to the people who need them? We did a survey in Los Angeles. It turns out that from electricians all the way down to construction managers to secretaries or whatever, greening the Los Angeles economy can create literally thousands of jobs for people who right now are unemployed. And we're working with folks down in LA to make that happen. In Oakland in particular, people know in Oakland that there's a lot of pain in the community. What we have and what we have had is an epidemic of murders in Oakland over the past couple of years as the economy's gotten more desperate. We had I think 160 murders in a town of 400,000 people. So we were one of the murder capitals of the country last year. What does that actually mean? What that means is we have 2- and 3-year-old kids in Oakland. If they see balloons, if they see flowers, they start crying. They think it's another funeral. They think it's another sidewalk memorial. They think somebody got killed. That's what that means. I mean, we've got kids who have gone to more funerals than fairgrounds in junior high school. I mean, it's a very, very major thing. And so when we talk about we want green-collar jobs, not jails, we're saying we are looking at the green economy as a way to survive, as a way to live, as a way to thrive, as the last balloon out of a difficult situation for a community that's struggling. So we're fighting for the green economy because we're fighting for our lives in Oakland. Okay? So what that looks like is, you know, we rallied the community to say we want a green economy. We want solar power in Oakland. We want our kids to have jobs doing it. We want organic agriculture. We want our kids to be tending those rooftop gardens, those community gardens. And these are elected officials who signed on to our challenge to try to make that happen. Oakland became the first city in October in the country to say that we are going to be independent of overseas oil by 2020. The first city to do that. We said that we're going to have zero waste in Oakland and create jobs for people in recycling and waste and materials reclamation by 2020. And we said we're going to have food security, organic, grown in the city food by 2020. The city council has voted these policies through because we are looking to the green economy as an opportunity to survive and to thrive. We made the recommendations that we're going to create in East Oakland, where we have a number of problems, the country's first green enterprise zone, and attract green businesses to Oakland. And we're creating the first Green Jobs Corps, where we've got the community colleges, local labor unions, and others standing together to say that we're going to train all these young people for these jobs. The mayor's behind it, city council's behind it, Chamber of Commerce is behind it, labor is behind it, students are behind it, because we're bringing the community together to say this is the opportunity to solve a number of problems at once: public health, environmental, global warming, community safety. It is not going to be easy. I'm not going to go through all this for you, but to get folks who have barriers to employment through their case management, soft skills, hard skills, paid internships, work experience, and finally onto careers will take a big investment and a lot of cooperation. But we think it's worth it. And the reason we think it's worth it, very simple. These are 3 of the kids in the neighborhood. One of the things that happens to you when you get to be my age is that you can start seeing certain patterns. And you can start making predictions. And, 7, 8 years from now, 10 years from now, these guys are going to be a lot taller, a little facial hair. There are going to be a lot of people who have ideas about what they should do. Coming up to them and saying, hey, sell this. I want you to be on my team. I want you to sell this. There are going to be people who got keys to jail cells say, I got a place for you over here. I want to be a part of a movement that has a place for them too. I want to be a part of a movement that says, we've got something for you to do. We've got a place for you to go. We've got a green technology training center in your high school where you can learn how to do something dignified. We want you to be in the middle, not the fringe, not the afterthought, the center of an agenda that says we want you to be a part of saving the world. We want you to knock some of these power plants out of existence by retrofitting buildings and putting up clean energy so you can take that asthma inhaler out of your little sister's pocket, you see. Like, to give the generation behind you in line a real chance to be a part of something beautiful. That's what I'm committed to. And people say, well, all the time, well, what does urban America have to do with this green agenda? I don't understand how it ever got divided in the first place. If you look at it as issue, you'll get confused. There's no issues. There's one solution for every problem that we're talking about, and it's a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty. We can save the polar bears, and we can save these kids too. And in fact, if we don't build a green economy that's big enough and strong enough to give these kids a chance, we will fall short. And so, what I'm begging you guys to do, as the first generation of young Americans who have the technology that you've got, who've got the passion that you've got, who've got the knowledge that you've got about what's happening on a planetary level, is to refuse to be divided, refuse to be put into little easily managed silos and categories where you can just get your little check mark and your own little victory for your own little self and not look at the whole. You're the first generation that has the position and the knowledge and the technology to look at the whole and find solutions for everybody and work together across those boundaries. If you do that, something is going to happen in this country that has not happened for a very long time. What will happen in this country is that a generation will stand up and not wait for the politicians to get it right, or the media to get it right, or the faith communities to get it right. You're going to stand up and you're going to say, we're going to make it right. Now, when that happens in a society, when the young people stand up, people fall in line. You are the people who are driving the change right now. If you add to every one of your demands, we want a carbon neutral campus, and we want to see labor and young people and urban youth being brought in to help make it carbon neutral. You just add one line to your demand. You change the whole debate. You change the reality of what this whole thing means. You're going to define it. You will define it. And the opportunity that you have, standing on the front end of this century, to have that kind of impact on the country is unbelievable. And what it means is that the United States, if under your leadership and direction, can be a leader in the world again. A world leader, but not in war, not in incarceration rates, not in pollution rates. You can lead the world in developing clean and green technologies. You can then share with India and China so they can boot up clean and don't make the same mistakes that we do. You can lead the world in showing that a rainbow country with every race, every nationality, every religion in it can come together and solve tough problems and show a rainbow planet how it's done. When you do that, then you don't have to spend all your time dealing with issues and fighting. We got to take America back. We got to take America back. You can just say, you know what? We are the next generation. We're going to take America forward. Thank you very much. Somebody's got a mic for y'all. Any questions? Who's got the mic? Nobody got the mic? Hi.
Hey, Ben, how do you talk to people who are unconvinced about what the future is or even should be, who don't agree with this image that most of the people in this room have of the future of this country, and who maybe don't even believe in global warming, hard as that is to believe?
Yeah, you know, that you had that problem until, you know, even a year ago. But at this point, your big problem is actually, before it's like, who's going to come to my party? There's nobody coming to my party. I'm having a party. It's called the global warming, the world's going to hell in the handbasket, somebody do something party. Shockingly, nobody showed up. So now, because of a couple of things that are happening, one is people are becoming more convinced, and you have cool solutions now that are exciting to people. Your problem now isn't your big empty house, how do you get more people to come? Your problem now is you got a whole bunch of people who are coming, who already get it. And I think we sometimes sometimes we just don't understand, you know, like, some of you may have been really desperately fun-looking and unpopular in high school. Okay, I was. And then, I'm still in. But then maybe you got to college, you got to a different situation, and suddenly, like, you know, you were cool, like, you had friends. You know, they were all nervous too, but they were friends. Right? And you didn't necessarily get it. Like, you didn't really understand that you actually were somebody who now had, you know, some social power. Well, I'm saying your movement's like that a little bit. You guys are, I mean, you may have misunderstood this question. You guys are absolutely going to win over everybody you need to win over. That's not going to be your problem. Your problem is going to be, the system is going to try to buy you off by saying, okay, you're great. We like you. We'll let you run a solar company. We'll let you be a senator, and you'll be the first eco-senator. But please shut up and sit down and don't ask any tough questions about the people who you're driving past on the way to the rally. So what I would say is, you should have great confidence that your ideas are winning over the country. The question is now, are your ideas expansive enough? A lot of people say, well, you know, some people don't agree, let's calm it down. What I would say is, stretch it out. And the other thing I know too is a lot of people who don't agree with you now, they don't agree with you because they don't know, they think it's cool not to agree. A year ago it was cool not to agree. 2 years now it will be those very same people, except a very, very hardcore group, won't even remember that they were on the wrong side of it. So my suggestion is that there are people in labor unions, people who are in communities of faith, people who are off these campuses, who would love to hear from you. They agree. They don't know everything you know, but you don't know everything they know. And the opportunity for you guys to be central to pulling together a coalition that's about creating jobs for people is so extraordinary that I wouldn't waste any time at this point. The Rush Limbaughs and those people, they're being left behind. And the polling data shows it day by day. I wouldn't even worry about it.
You briefly mentioned New Orleans. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how that Hurricane Katrina affected our situation and how it could possibly be used for the movement that you're talking about as kind of a national spotlight event.
Well, one of the things that happened, of course, is that when you have an American city underwater, you have an American city drowned, and you finally see the prophecy come true, there are people who politically, ideologically, for years have been saying, we don't need government. We don't need government. Government's the problem. It's not the solution. Government's the problem. What we need is for people just to sink or swim. Stand on your own 2 feet and sink or swim. That's what we need. That'll make the country better. And you cut on TV, and you saw people sinking. Because we had a free market evacuation plan in New Orleans. That's what you saw, a free market evacuation. If you had a credit card and a functioning car, you could escape. If you didn't, you had to stay there and drown. So there was something about that that was very disquieting for the American people. People don't like to talk about Katrina. You don't want to talk about it. But look at George Bush's poll numbers. George Bush's presidency drowned in the floodwaters of Katrina. His numbers started going down with Katrina, and they never recovered. Because people don't believe that that's how we should be as a country. That if you're in a wheelchair and you don't have enough money for an attendant, you should drown. If you're poor and African American or Latino, and you've been, when the people came to Oakland from New Orleans, because 20% of all the black people in Oakland have relatives from New Orleans. When they came and they got off the buses, I was there, a bunch of us were there. When we went to shake their hands and to hug them, hard hands, coarse hands. So working people. These are the people who clean the toilets in all those hotels down there, who didn't have enough money because it was 4 days before payday to put gas in their car. That's why they stayed behind. Okay, these were the working poor of New Orleans who had been abandoned. And some of them had sat on rooftops with baby in one hand and American flag on the other for 4, 5, 6, 7 days. And so something happened around that. And we began to understand that we have an obligation to each other. And we have an obligation to have a government that can deal with the crises that we're actually likely to face. That creates a context for you guys. Doesn't mean government can solve all the problems. In fact, I'm saying the entrepreneurs will solve a bunch of them. But I am saying that we should be asking the questions right now. When the fires hit California this summer because of global warming, the snowpack is getting smaller, the water table is falling, all that timber is dry as dust. And when it goes up this summer, they're not sure they can put the fires out this summer. They almost lost it last summer. What's going to happen to the poor people who live out there in some of those places? Is there a plan for them? Okay? We had a freeze, a shock freeze, that wiped out in one day the entire California citrus crop. You know who got really hurt? All the farm workers, the poor Latino Mexican farm workers who suddenly had no work. Right? The community had to rally, and the state legislature rallied to try to help them. Okay? But what you're going to have, yes, you have all this promise, and we have to make sure that the promise of the green economy is shared. But the peril cannot fall solely on the backs of the poor and the vulnerable, like it did in Katrina. And we can use that to talk. When you say to the country, as a young generation of idealistic people, that you don't want the poor to be victimized disproportionately by the peril of the new period, and you don't want the rich and the affluent to unjustly monopolize the promise, that's going to shock people. Nobody's expecting this movement that you're building to embrace the left out and the vulnerable. They hope that you're going to be so busy arguing with your right-wing roommate that's your whole life, and that you will ignore the fact that you've got the opportunity to help a lot of people. So I do think Katrina it creates a conversation. People are even the Democrats don't like to talk about Katrina. It's such a shameful point, but we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it. And we've found that it opens doorways to talk about disaster preparedness, but more importantly, our obligation to each other.
as an English major, I feel like I don't necessarily speak the language of economics or sustainability of business or these things. How do you feel like the role of these people who are kind of in this kind of group that gets all this stuff, like entrepreneurs and business people? What's kind of the role of the layman and like English teaching?
No, it's a good question. You're going to see something pretty interesting over the next 10 years. Let's talk about economics for a second. We'll talk about literature. Economics is about to be challenged by the facts on the ground. See, markets work really well when the signals are right. We have the biggest market failure in the history of human civilization right now because dumping carbon is free. There's no price for carbon. Dump carbon, it's free. No big deal. Just dump it, it's free. You drive your car, you're just dumping it, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. Right? The biggest market failure in the history of the world. So now you're going to have people trying to jump in, trying to fix that with cap and trade or carbon taxes, trying to figure out some way to actually get the price signals right so we get away from this carbon-based economy. But you're going to see a big challenge to classic economic theory based on this. You're going to see a big challenge to classic political theory. Classic political theory says basically you discount, both the economists and the politicians discount the future to zero and then operate inside of very short time horizons. You're going to see big challenges to that. And you're going to need the people in your generation are going to come up and say, you're going to look at these textbooks, and you're going to look out the window at the flood and the fires and the plagues. You're going to look at your textbook, and you're going to say, it's kind of biblical out here. This doesn't quite add up. And you're going to challenge that knowledge. You're going to reinvent it. But there's nothing that's more important than the literature. There's nothing more important than the story that we tell ourselves about our society, about our future, about who we are. Because before you can deal with the economic models, I have a son who's 2.5. He deals with stories. And the story that we've been telling ourselves as a civilization, as Western civilization, is a broken story. And you can see it in the increasing dysfunction at every level. And so the heroes will be the poets. The prophets will be the poets. They will be the people who are able to see through all the clutter and the glitter and the crap and the nonsense and say, no, this is what's true. No, this is what's happening. This is who we have become. Okay? And so the mythology that your generation creates, right, and especially your generation of progressives, is something you have to take more seriously than I can even say. Why? The last century's left had a mythology with a very deep root, and that mythology was called David versus Goliath. You look at every significant left ideology. My little bitty victimized self against some big other, right? And I got to fight them. And that was important. I'm not saying that was wrong. I actually think it was a very important moment. But there's a shadow side of that David and Goliath mythology, which is that I always have to be small and weak. I have to be a victim. There has to be some big other. There's got to be a confrontation, right? What I'm saying is that now there might be other parts of the book, if you want to stay inside the Judeo-Christian mythological tradition. This is going to be more like Mr. and Mrs. Noah, okay? That's really more the story that we're in. The problem is way bigger than this bad corporation or this racist or this sexist. It's a much bigger problem. So the flood is coming, a systemic crisis. You may actually want to get Goliath to help you out building the boat. You know what I mean? It's that deep, okay? And so we need new stories. If you take the racial justice struggles. Anybody ever see the movie Amistad? Amistad? People who missed it? It was a movie about a rebellion on a slave ship. And it goes on from there. But if you think about it, the narrative structure of Amistad in the beginning is the narrative structure of the racial justice movement. The oppressed have to rebel against the oppressors and try to claim their own destiny. It's a beautiful, powerful story. But what if you're Van Jones and you're doing your whole organizing the oppressed in the hulls of the ship, and you're going to do the big, we're going to take over the ship, and we got to fight the white man, and you get all together, and you look out a boat, and the boat says, the Titanic. Oh, shit. This is a very different leadership challenge than what I signed up for. This is a very different leadership challenge. I have to save my people and the whole boat too. That's different. Okay? So we need a different story. How is it that the slave ship Titanic frees its oppressed so that their genius and creativity can be a part of the solution for the whole boat? That's your generation's story to write. So you asked the question about the English major. You think an economist is going to be able to figure this out? I mean, you guys are living in the worst possible situation. Except that it's the worst possible situation that brings out the best in people. That's when you have the age of the heroes and the sheroes. That's when you have people who can make dramatic breaks. See, I know you guys. You're going to beat me up. I said sheroes, too. I've been on a couple of these campuses. You guys are in a situation where it's so bad, it's so farcical, it's so ridiculous that you can break with the orthodoxies and invent whole new paradigms and structures, and society will actually follow you. Because they know this is not working. They know it's not working. I've been to the World Economic Forum 5 times at Davos. You think the people who are in charge of the planet actually know what they're doing? I'm serious. I'm serious. You go to the World Economic Forum, you got Bill Gates and Bill Clinton, they're all walking in. Oh, yeah, good to see everybody. Yes, we're in here meeting. World Economic Forum, that's us. We're in charge. We'll be right back. Good to see everybody. Thank you very much. Close the door. Oh, my God, what the heck is happening? What are we going to do? Right? I mean, Al Gore was giving that presentation. He got the Oscar for it or whatever yesterday, but he was giving that presentation, years ago. And I was there when, I think it was the head of the Kuwaiti oil company said, or oil corporation. They only got one corporation in Kuwait that does the oil thing. The head was there. He sitting right next to me. And he says, well, Mr. Gore, Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for your presentation. Let me ask you a question. All of us here who are CEOs of all the big oil corporations in the world together have a total capital outlay of about $50 trillion designed to get carbon molecules out of the ground and burn them. It's what we do. It's our job. That thing turns over once every about 40 years, 40 to 60 years. If we had perfect technology, and we don't, if we had perfect political leadership, and we don't, and we had the perfect will to do it, and we don't, it would cost us about, $50 trillion in 40 to 60 years to fix this problem. So what do you want us to do? It was dead silence in the room. I got up and walked out and got some lunch. Because they don't know how to deal with this. You have better ideas about how to deal with it than the people in charge. So what I'm saying to you is that from the literature to the science to the economics to the philosophy, the whole thing's up for grabs. You can't just rush past your homework and just say, well, great, it's all bullshit, I'll just make it up. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that you've got to study even harder to push through the nonsense, to come out the other side with some answers that may actually give us a planet we can live on. Let's get 2 more questions and then we'll call it a day. Here and then back.
You talked a lot about helping marginalized people in this country, and you also mentioned India and China.
Yep.
So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit more about how we can involve marginalized people internationally in this movement.
Two things. One is, India and China didn't create the problem. And so there's this challenge that we have in our conversation with India and China. We're in a situation where we're like, oh my God, if India and China power up like we powered up, if India and China do what we did, we're all toast. So India and China should stop. And it's just transparently stupid and hypocritical from the point of view of the Indians and the Chinese. They're like, we weren't doing anything but minding our own beeswax for a very long time. You guys were having a big old party. Now we're about to be able to start to feed and clothe our population, and you want us to stop. No, right? And then they go on. And so this reveals a problem in a lot of the discussion that we've been having. The whole slogan of energy independence is fraught with peril. First of all, for a lot of people, what energy independence means is screw the Arabs. It's a way to kind of like dress up some I hate the Arabs stuff with something that's a little bit more PC. But it's worse than that, if you can imagine something worse than that. It's worse than that because it's actually thinking in the wrong direction. We don't want energy independence. We want energy interdependence. This is a global problem that can only be solved by global cooperation. Okay? We have to work together. And we should be, your movement should be saying from the beginning, we want a global solution. We want global partnerships to solve this problem. We want to create cool new technologies and share them with the world. Help Africa and Latin America boot up and get their economies off the ground in a clean way, and help India and China cool off the global warming parts of their economies. But that is a key international solidarity position for your movement to take. That you're not going to get divided and pitted against the world, the Chinese or the Arabs or anybody else. So that's really, really critical. The other piece of it is that when you're talking about Africa, you're talking about Latin America and other places that really need a lot of help, renewable technologies help countries leapfrog very capital-intensive development phases, which is a good thing because they don't have a lot of capital. They have a lot of people. And renewable technologies are more labor-intensive, more people-intensive. It takes more people to create biofuels. It takes more people to put up and manage solar cells. It takes more people to, see? So it's actually a good development strategy to encourage certain countries to go down. So there's a way to have this conversation both with the rising powers and those countries that are flat on their back, but it has to be done from a respectful place and respectful point of view. I want to say one more thing about our global partnerships and this environmental movement. We have a very big problem, and the problem is called ethanol. In the United States, when people say ethanol, this is not Brazil, in the U.S., they mean corn-based ethanol. That's really bad. And I'm going to tell you why it's really bad. Corn is food. In case somebody missed this point, corn is food, not fuel. You say, corn might be food to you. I don't eat corn. Tortillas in Mexico, the staple, tortillas and beans, the staple food, that's corn. Beef is corn. Chicken is corn. Eggs are corn. Milk is corn. Yogurt is corn. Corn syrup in your soda, that's corn. Okay? We some corn eating folks. Okay? See how I clean that up? See? You're impressed? You're impressed. We some corn eating folks. Now, when you take that ear of corn and you have the supermarkets and the service stations competing for it, what happens to the price of that corn? Any economic people in here? It goes up. Corn-based ethanol is driving up the price of corn, which drives up the price of food for everyone. And you think to yourself, hey, too bad, eat less, we got to fix global warming. That's what you're thinking, right? I know you're thinking. Said, too bad, eat less, we got to fix global warming. Well, guess what? If you turn every kernel of corn into ethanol, you get 16% of the U.S. Fuel needs. And you have food riots in Mexico. And you still have global warming. But you know what you got? You got big agriculture making a lot of money. Okay? We have to be able to have a conversation about environmental solutions that has poor people at the table saying, but what about the price of my tortilla? You see? Or we're going to get it wrong. Okay? This movement that you guys are a part of is so big, it has so much force that Barack Obama is out there jumping up and down trying to get your vote talking about ethanol. If you tell him you're a loser, he's going to say, I meant something else. What did I mean? Right? I didn't mean that. Ethanol? Oh, no, that's for losers. What are y'all down with? You guys have that much power. Okay? Now, what's the real solution? The real solution is simply this. You want to get ready for a real solution? Ready to be shocked? It's shock. Here's the real solution. Ban the combustible engine. Ban it. You want to have a movement that actually does something? Say we want in 10 years, at best, plug-in hybrids on a clean energy grid, and we prefer just straight-up electric cars. Why? Because then you solve the damn problem. You think to yourself, this guy's nuts. This guy's totally insane. Except, look at your history. FDR. You know this. FDR. What happens? Pearl Harbor gets bombed. What's that? A global planetary emergency. The whole planet is now at war. What does FDR do? He gets up, he makes a big speech. He says, we're going to make a gazillion planes, a gazillion tanks, and a gazillion this, and we're going to arm the world, and we're going to do all this type of stuff. And then he walks off the stage. He goes, I don't know how the hell to do all that stuff. So he calls in Detroit. And he sits them down. He says, we're going to, we got to get busy, and we want you guys to do it. And you know what Detroit says? Because you guys think Detroit is bad just like this week. You just think the big auto manufacturers are mean and evil this week, right? No! You know what they said? They said, well, geez, we'd be happy to help you, Mr. President, but it's going to be hard making all those tanks and making all our cars, too. You know what FDR says? Well, that's fine. I'm going to ban the sale of private cars until we win the war. Problem solved. It's called political will. It's called taking a crisis seriously. If your movement says, cut it out with the ethanol, shell game nonsense, it won't solve the problem and it's going to hurt poor people. We want a real solution. You won't win it tomorrow, but you'll win it because it's the right answer. And it'll create a bunch of jobs. You got to put up a bunch of windmills. You got to put up a bunch of solar. You got to completely redo Detroit's business model. You got to put a bunch of people to work. Now, those kinds of solutions, no politician can put out right now, but you can. Just like 2 years ago, nobody can say stuff you guys, the people running for office now are quoting you. I want you guys to understand your power. I want you to understand how important you are to the country and to this process. And I want you guys to understand how important it is that you get the right answers. Because you aren't running for anything right now. You're just trying to save the planet. Last question.
I work in the renewable energy industry, and one of the things that I'm concerned about is I see huge investments being made in wind power, solar, and as you were sort of saying, behind the scenes, behind sort of solving the global warming problem is the same economic, I guess I would say, dominance that we've seen in the last 100 years. I mean, $500 million wind farm, $80 million solar facility. The primary beneficiary is not the people in that community who now have a solar panel on their roof. It's the person who built that solar panel, because the price is the same, and the pollution was always back to the factory. It wasn't on the home. So I'm not sure exactly what the question is there, but it's a concern of mine, and I see it kind of going the wrong way right now.
Yeah, there's going to be a tug of war, and there should be. You on one side and Chevron on the other about the future of this green economy. It's that whole grid I'm talking about in terms of it's not just wealth or race, it's also about power. Are we going to have a distributed energy system? You got distributed technology every place else, right? What about the energy system? Can we have local power? Can we get it down to the neighborhood level where neighborhoods are in charge of their own food, in charge of their own energy, in charge of their own rainwater? Well, frankly, that's the right answer. You're not going to really be able to solve these problems any other way. We'll get there either because we choose to or because we get forced there. But what is happening right now is that the people who made a bunch of money creating the problem, the people who made a ton of money, a big old pile, planet-sized pile of money creating the problem, are now trying to make a whole bunch of money fixing and solving the problem. It's not the worst thing in the world, because at least they're trying to move it in the right direction. But you guys can keep raising the stakes and raising the standards. And that's really the opportunity that you have. Many of you will do all kinds of stuff with your lives. A smaller number of you are going to make this a central part of your life for the next 10 or 20 years. And I just want to, in closing, just talk to you guys. It is not easy to figure out the answers here. What's the right technology? What's the right economic model? What's the right story? I will suggest, without any evidence to back me up, but just based on my own experience, that the most important thing to rely on moving forward is not going to be this, it's going to be this. Many of you do yoga or have tried to do yoga, like me, gave up. The first time you try to do it, it's hard because your muscles are stiff, but over time, your muscles stretch and you can do stuff you didn't think you could do. Your heart is a muscle. One of the things that we need now more than ever is to keep stretching our hearts, to keep trying to include more people in the conversation, more people in our field of moral vision. It'll freak your parents out even more than they're already freaked out. It's bad enough you're on some solar hippie trip, now you're going to be concerned about the black kids. Thanksgiving will get more and more interesting. But the service that you've already done is so important. And yet it's nothing compared to the service that you can do. The answers are not known. But the right question is simply this. What can I do, what can my generation do to build a green economy strong enough to lift people out of poverty? How can we build a green wave that can lift all boats? How can we make sure that we don't leave anybody out this time? The first industrial revolution screwed over the people and the planet. The next industrial revolution, you can already see there's a way we might be able to avoid screwing over the planet. Let's not screw over the people either. Let's include everybody. Thank you very much.